Yo, what's going on? It's your boy Big Dre, aka The Conscious Christian. The subject of tithing has come up more in recent weeks as a hot button topic. While some want to know where the tithe is prohibited in the New Testament church, others want to know if it's right to tithe things that's received from public assistance. And still, people want to use tithes as a way of giving back to God for the purpose of honoring Him. Let's look at some of these things. The description of the biblical tithe is outlined as agricultural produce. This is fruits, vegetables, grains, spices, and anything else that could be grown from a seed and eaten. For example, if you had 10 apples, one will go into a different basket as your tithe. It was also the 10th livestock that passed during the count. In other words, if you had 9 cows, you weren't required to tithe that. The biblical tithe was not what Abraham gave. His tithe consisted of the spoils of war when fighting to save his nephew Lot. This was not his increase. Abraham was already a wealthy man, so much so that he returned the 90% of the spoils back to its rightful owners and traveled 150 miles to the Valley of Kings in order to do so. Here's how the tithing system worked. The tithe was counted off by farmers and landowners that farmed. These were the only people who could tithe. If you were a wage worker, like a blacksmith, shoemaker, even if you were a worker on the farm, you were not required to tithe because wages are not a tithable commodity. Then, after counting, they delivered the food to the Levitical cities throughout the land of Canaan. Whichever city was closest to you as a farmer, that's where your tithe would go. The priest would go to those cities and collect a tenth from this to bring to the temple and store in the storehouse. This was a room that was built into the temple to house meat and produce. The food there was used to feed temple workers that worked during their cycle, as well as the priests. This is one of the reasons why tithes was food. The tithe was also used to feed the needy as well. Malachi 3, 8 through 10 speaks about the tithe that was taken from the storehouse by the priests. It was more than their portion, and God viewed that as robbery and told them to put it back, and He'll cause it to rain again because they were in a drought. So, where does it say that we, as in the Christian church, are prohibited from tithing? Nowhere. But there are some prerequisites that you must meet in order to tithe biblically. First, you must be a physical descendant of Jacob. Second, you have to be given a portion of the promised land. Third, you have to move into the promised land. Fourth, you have to raise crops and livestock in that portion of the promised land. Fifth, you have to take a portion of the crops and livestock from the farming communities to the Levitical cities. Sixth, a priest must be present when bringing your tithe to the Levitical cities. If you can pass these things, you can tithe biblically. Now, you cannot tithe anything received from public assistance. Biblically, the tithe was fruits, vegetables, and meat grown on your soil in the land of Canaan. The government can't provide you with any of those things. Now, using the tithe to honor God makes no sense. Tithing was a law only for farmers and landowners. Remember, if you were a wage worker back then, you were not required to tithe. So, for millions of wage workers back then, how did you honor God with your tithes? You didn't honor God with your tithes because you didn't tithe. Now, if you really want to give to God, there's one simple way to do this: giving to the poor among you. This is how the Bible describes giving to God. When you give help to those who are in need, it shows your love and compassion, which is a godly attribute. But this isn't a New Testament thing. You see this in the Old Testament as well. God is well pleased when you care for those that cannot care for themselves. If you like this video, hit the like button. Or, as always, please share.